Hello. Um, Welcome back to Sam's Chats, I suppose. A part of me kind of really enjoys just kind of talking, but at the same time, I also don't like just making these videos because they're really easy for me to make. But the target audience with this is basically myself. Like, I'm the only person that probably listens to these fully, and or at least um has gone back and listened to some of my own. And I think it's a good log for myself and where my mindset was at kind of down the line. And this wasn't even like the topic I was going to go with. This was supposed to be just an intro, but it just shows how easily I get off track. Um, but I think it's a good way to kind of keep a record of what my mind was thinking at the time, and I can look back and listen to these videos. And some of them I've like listened back to them. I was like, hey, like interesting thought, me. I forget some of the stuff that I talk about, and I'm like, yeah, like you're so right. But um uh yeah, sometimes it's good to remind yourself of some things, I guess. So um anyway, I like to have these little chats, and it's a good way for me to basically just vent and speak about things or just speak in general. um I do think I have a bit of a fascination with my own voice and my own thoughts. But it can't be helped, I guess. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, so long as it's not like, as long as I'm aware of it. I don't know. I guess maybe it's not as bad. It doesn't really matter. I'm not forcing anyone to listen to these. So that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. This is not everything is about everyone else. Sometimes things are about me, and that's okay. Um, Let me try and get to a serious thought or talk about something. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna be kind of brief on this, but this is literally a thought that I just had earlier because I'm listening to this book right now. If you don't know, I listen to audiobooks quite often, and there was like a deal on these like kind of Buddhist or like mindfulness books. And I listened to the one; it was pretty good. It was like what was that called? Actually, I'll look it up real quick. That one was. Oh, where's my library? That one was Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. That one was pretty good. Um, I thought it had some good points in it. Um, but now I'm listening to Buddha's Brain, and I haven't gone very far into it, so I don't know exactly what I feel about it. But so far, a lot of kind of science and logic being used to back up why it's so good to be mindful and aware of yourself and aware of the world and kind of present in the moment and just things like that, which is interesting. It's a different perspective that not a lot of people go into as much. Kind of going into just evolution and how it's led to where we are. And on that topic, um, oh, whoops. She filled her sword with mud. Nope. Whoops. And on that topic, uh, he mentions in the book, uh, or at least the reader. I don't know if the author's a man or not. I'm assuming it is, or they would have gotten a female reader. Maybe that's not how that works at all. I have no idea. Anyway, I'm listening to the book, and it's talking about how in order for our bodies to survive, like evolution wise, in order for animals to survive and our brain to develop, we kind of have a side that is more cognitive thought and uses logic, and another one that's just a base reaction. And basically, um, you have your base, like your instincts, that'll be like, that just immediately trip your fear and whatever. And so he's talking about all this stuff, and he talks about how a part of your mind has developed like kind of rehashing past conversations or past experiences and kind of looking back on them and assessing them and thinking about different ways of handling the situation. And this is actually a survival trait because what you're doing is you're looking back and seeing how you could have done that better, how you could have um like come out like in a like just better in general for that scenario, and by kind of reassessing situations from the past, you can kind of plan for future scenarios where something similar pops up, and you'll be better prepared for it. And you've learned from your past experience, and you've assessed your past experience, and you've prepared for the next time you come across such a situation. And so you're kind of rehashing these things, and he calls it a simulation, where you're kind of like, you daydream, or like, imagine you think about, you meet someone and you're like, oh my gosh, this person's going to be the coolest person ever. You could think about it in like a friend, just like a friendship level. You'll be like, they're going to be my best friend. We're going to do all this stuff together. You plan out all these things. Or maybe you meet someone and you say like, and you get to know them and you're like, they're going to betray me. They're going to do all these things. And you think about all the worst case scenarios, or like you think about all the best case scenarios. Like each one of those things that you're thinking about, a best case or worst case scenario, that's a simulation that your mind is running kind of in the background a little bit, thinking about ways to prepare for and how to approach situations in the future when they come up, if they come up. And I thought this was interesting because I was thinking about this, and it's like, yeah, your mind kind of slips into these like little simulations that it runs all the time, without you really thinking about it, without you trying to. They just kind of pop up. And then the thought that came to me is, if my mind is constantly running these simulations to try and, like prepare for like worst case scenarios or any possible situation and try and be prepared for it, where does this end? Down the line, eventually, would your mind get to a point where it simulates everything? Every minute detail it's simulating in an attempt to prepare for any scenario. So that anything and everything is being simulated by your brain. Not necessarily all at once. It could be all at once. But, each individual possible scenarios being run through by your mind right now. And right now, what we're living is not actually life, but it is the simulation of what life could be. And actually, like the simulation it's not like a simulation like, oh, we're all in a computer and your life's not real or whatever. It's more, no, it's a simulation by yourself in your brain. It's you, but it's also not you, because this is just a version of what you could be, and every single possible iteration is being run by your brain, trying to think of the optimal way to live its life. And it's like, what if this is just one possible outcome that I'm living through, feeling like it's a real experience, because it's simulating a real experience. Because if you were aware of the simulation, it wouldn't be accurate to what real life is. So it's as accurate as it can be, and it feels as real as it possibly can in order to prepare you for that scenario. So when you actually come in contact with the scenario, if you ever did, when you actually live your life for real rather than simulating it, you know how to do, you know how to react, and you do that, and you are prepared. What if every interaction that you have in your life is actually just you thinking about, oh, what would happen if this happened? What would happen if this happened? And so for every choice you make, you also simulate the opposite choice, or not necessarily a choice that's an opposite, but an adjacent choice, because, you could have chose right or left, but you could also go straight, backwards, or literally any direction in between. And there's an infinite amount of directions in between right and left. From a technical standpoint. So, the possibilities are endless, of course. But what if your mind is simulating every possible situation, and we've attained some kind of basically godhood, where the universe that we're experiencing is actually just ourselves planning for actually living in the universe. And we're not like, and an adjacent thought to this that I kind of had was, okay, well, thinking about it like this, there's easy ways you can be like, okay, well, maybe it's hard to prove not, but it's also like, what are the odds, I guess, as well. But the same thing can be said for a lot of stuff. Like what are the odds? But when you go to sleep at night, maybe it makes sense why you need to sleep at night. This was a thought I was having. I've kind of found some holes with it that don't quite make sense. But you sleep at night and you can dream, and maybe this dreaming is more like it's like interference with other simulations that your mind is running at the same time, and you kind of get you're like this stream of consciousness that's running this simulation gets kind of intertwined with another one, and there's a little bit of interference there during your downtime for, I don't know, server maintenance on your brain, right? And so your brain, like, maybe everything sleeps because your brain can only simulate so much at a time. So when you go to sleep, you get really exhausted, you need to sleep. Your brain kind of gets to reset and can take a break from running constantly, because you run a motor at 100% for days on end. It's definitely going to get some wear there. There's a reason why you have to do maintenance on cars and tools and everything. It gets worn down over time. You have to do repairs, and so in order to allow for those repairs, you have downtime in the form of sleeping, where your brain is doing nothing. The thing is that brings up in this question is, okay, well, if I'm sleeping, isn't this supposed to be a simulation of real life? If I'm sleeping in my simulation, that's not real life, because I wouldn't sleep in real life if it's only for the simulation. But then you come into the question, well, what if the simulation is a simulation and you're just in loops, So sleeping is just a thing because out of necessity, and there's no end or beginning to these simulation runs. But the reason for sleep being needed by pretty much every animal is because it was just built into the design. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that better. Like sleep exists because sleep had to exist for the simulations to exist. And because the simulations exist, sleep exists. If that makes sense. It doesn't need to. The thing is, it doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't need to make sense because nothing needs to make sense. That's a human thought. Nothing needs to make sense. Nothing needs to be logical. Nothing needs to follow a certain pattern. Nothing needs to follow a certain flow, which I think is really fascinating. That's a lot of stuff does, but it really doesn't have to. And that's a whole nother thing. That's why I kind of like the whole idea of the absurd, and that's why I make these random videos that it's like, what the hell is going on is basically what I'm trying to get across. What the hell is going on is the whole point, because it's like, what the hell is going on? Nothing needs to make sense, nothing does make sense, and anything is technically possible. So why not make videos about random stuff that wouldn't actually happen, but technically did, because I did it. You know what I'm saying? But like, that's just like, the world is absurd, and like the idea of absurdism, I don't know if I necessarily follow it, but my own version of absurdism is, the world is crazy, and that's awesome. You might as well embrace it. There's no point of taking the whole world so seriously when it doesn't take itself seriously. There is no, what we consider logic and rules and the laws of reality and the universe. That's what we've used to help understand the world we live in and make sense of it all, but none of it really makes sense. And the deeper we go, the more we realize that we still don't know all that much in the grand scheme of things. Like, we know some things, it seems like we have everything figured out, but the deeper we go, we keep finding out that there's more and more things about the universe that we don't know. We're like, oh, the end of the line is the atom, and then all of a sudden we can split the atom, and then all of a sudden we can split those, and it keeps going down, and there's so many layers. And if who's to say that it ever actually ends? Who's to say that we're not on some smaller scale? Um, and I think this is another idea. Let me just check if this is a rant that I have lined up here. Um, uh, yeah, this is a rant that I have. So I'm going to do that in a different one.